folks, hope that you're well. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Rivian Stories podcast. Doing things a little bit differently this time, not just recording the voice, but I'm recording with a camera, I'm recording my screen, and I have about 12 Chrome tabs open, going to different stories and news and updates and conversations on Reddit and other places that I thought were interesting. The whole idea is just to do a little bit of a news and conversation roundup, a little bit of a Rivian news fix. And this might be the format of the podcast going forward once a week, but I also still want to try and get some interviews lined up with you all, the listeners, other pre-order holders, as well, hopefully in time, of some people on the inside at Rivian. But for now, the news. The big news this week, if I switch my screen over here, is of course that the Configurator was released to the public. This was this past Monday. There's really not too much news. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. Most people kind of know what's going on here. The couple things worth noting is that the launch edition was, quote, sold out by the end of the first week. So before we got to the public orders, the launch edition was sold out. I'm not sure exactly what that number was, but if you get there now, you can see that the launch edition says that reservations are full. But beyond that, not much changed. You can still get the large and the max pack in the truck, but not the SUV. You can still get the same colors except for the launch green. The adventure package still includes that off-road upgrade for $2,000. Honestly, one of the big things that I noticed was that the wheels, there's more options for the SUV. When I pre-ordered, there was only 3 wheel options. Now there's 5 because they have a dark version, so a black version of the 20-inch wheel and the 22-inch wheel. Those are both extra now, so any upgrade to the 20-inch or the 22-inch wheels, whether it be the chrome or the black, you will not have to pay an upgrade fee, and those were included in the launch edition. And there might be a few other very small things, but other than that, it is pretty similar. So let's just leave that story at that. But hopefully things are going well over at Rivian headquarters and people are ordering. That really brings us into the first story. Honestly, I think that one of the biggest stories this week coming from the Rivian news front as far as the publications and editorials was that Bloomberg did an interview with RJ. And they covered a lot of ground here. Go to rivianstories.com where I have some highlights and some notes just as far as a summary. But it's about a 21-minute interview. And to me, the most important part of this interview came around the 14-minute mark. I'm just going to play it straight from the computer here.
What is Rivian's competitive advantage when it comes to delivery vans? You're taking on the likes of Ford, who are also an investor in the company, but there are others out there like Daimler. You know, what is it that Rivian does well that makes your delivery van or commercial vehicle an attractive option for fleet operators?
I think most importantly is when you look at a vehicle, and especially a connected electric vehicle, the deep expertise that's necessary in a few areas where one needs to really vertically integrate. So battery systems, drive systems, those are probably pretty predictable in that those are areas that we vertically integrate and have a lot of very strong core competency. But more important in many ways is the digital ecosystem on the vehicle. So that's all the compute platforms, that's the software stacks on the vehicle, that's the sensor sets on the vehicle. And by controlling that digital backbone of the vehicle, it allows us to integrate with the way we run the fleet. It allows us to integrate with how we perform maintenance on it, allows us to integrate with charging strategies. So there's a lot of operational advantages one gets from really deeply controlling all the electronics, all the software within the vehicle. And those were areas we focused heavily on and have spent many years developing those systems.
Before we finish,
So the reason I thought that was so important to me is, Rivian's always going to have a lot of comparison to Tesla. They have from the beginning. I'm sure they will for a long time more. For me, as someone who has followed Tesla a lot and considered buying a Tesla, one of the things that drew me to Tesla is the phenomenal technology. I'll be honest, I've never been a huge car or truck guy myself. But my first time I experienced a Tesla, I was blown away because I am a gadget guy. And although battery tech is huge for a electric car and drivetrain is huge, as RJ said, it is very necessary to have a core competency in both of those. But I have just been wondering as a consumer, how will that digital ecosystem stack up against the best of the best that is out there, namely Tesla? And for me, it was just refreshing and good news to hear RJ say that they have spent a significant amount of focus and then therefore resources on making sure that that tech stack is up to snuff and has a good foundation and is vertically integrated. And if you're with us on YouTube and you saw that at the end, RJ kind of let out a smile, basically saying, I have worked personally on this the past couple of years, has spent a lot of time because he realizes how important it is to have great technology. And I'm sure over this time they have been recruiting really great software engineers. And so to me, that's great news. We haven't heard much about the digital ecosystem up until now. We've seen a few kind of pictures of it from those screens, but we just haven't heard a ton about it yet. So it is nice to hear that that has been a focus for quite some time. Next story here is another YouTube video. It's entitled Rivian Rant, the R1T or Amazon's delivery vans. Listen, I don't know this guy personally at all, but I'm just going to play a little bit of a clip and then I'll give my honest response here.
Vehicles will start in 2022. So as I've been following this Rivian story, I've seen them continually kick the can down the road and sort of delay their production vehicles, which is pretty normal for the...
So I do have to stop already. And I just want to make it very clear. He says, I've seen Rivian continue to kick the can down the road. I pre-ordered on day 2. And on that day, it said deliveries would be at the end of 2020, which is right now. We've only technically and truthfully had one delay due to a thing called COVID-19, which has delayed everyone. Supply chains are backed up everywhere, not just in the automobile industry. And so I think that we all realize that there may have been delays even without COVID. With COVID, there's a significant chance you'll have a delay as a startup. But I just do want to point out that there has been one delay so far.
It's pretty normal for the electric vehicle industry, for those who follow Tesla. But what's interesting about that is simultaneously, while they've been trying to get their own electric pickup to production, they did a deal with the devil. They signed a deal with Amazon and Jeff Bezos, and they said, Jeff Bezos, we're going to take your money from you. I mean, Jeff Bezos never really strategically invests in companies unless he plans on buying them later. That's my opinion. I think, and I made a ton of videos about how Amazon is just going to buy Rivian the second that it works, because they need a pure play in the EV space, and Bezos wants to compete with Elon. So I think there's a ton of sense there. But now in the corporate boardroom, if I'm a Rivian customer, this is what I asked Ben Sullins, one of my buddies who put out a video about ordering his R1T. Rivian is delaying your pickup truck so they can focus on Jeff Bezos' delivery vans. And it's pretty dope project, honestly. I don't want to hate on it because I love what Amazon's doing here. I've been pounding the table for Amazon to partner with Tesla to do electric delivery. And now they're there's too much Elon Bezos beef. So they decided we'd rather buy crappier vans with less range with worse batteries from Rivian because we're so stubborn. But hey, I'm pumped. Go for it. And so they unveiled this really snazzy looking new delivery van. And Amazon claims they want 100,000 of these, start putting them on the road as soon as there's conflicting evidence. It looks like these have gotten delayed. Originally, they weren't delayed when they delayed the trucks, but now they are delayed till 2022 as well. But it seems like Rivian has put it, while they've sort of taken the gas off their core consumer vehicle program, has stepped on the gas of this Amazon program. And
so he goes on and talks for another 6 or 7 minutes about this, basically saying that Rivian's focusing on Amazon and they're leaving their sort of core idea, which was the truck and the SUV. They're leaving those people kind of as a second thought, and their priority is Amazon. And how do you feel about that, pre-order holders? So I'll just be honest here. I have a hard time believing that this is a very honest post. There's a lot of content creators that will do anything just to kind of make a story or a conflict where there isn't one. And I'll just react personally as a pre-order holder, as a guy who owns a small business myself. When I pre-ordered the Rivian, my biggest concern was not only if Rivian would deliver, and there was a small chance that they would actually deliver their production model, but even beyond that, that they would be in business 5 years after their first production models hit the road. Because as we've seen from Tesla, and as he would know, it is so difficult for a car company to make it to production and then to make it for another 5 years and then to make it for another 5 years beyond that. When I saw that Rivian had, quote, signed this deal with the devil, or basically agreed to produce 100,000 vans for Amazon, as a pre-order holder, that was some of the best news ever, because it is just such a security net for Rivian as a whole. I mean, to run a successful business, you don't just need a good, compelling product that will create demand. You obviously need that, but more than anything is you need an audience, you need customers. And so 100,000, now it's one customer in Amazon, but it's one customer that makes all the difference. And anyone who's done a business knows that 20% of your clients usually bring you 80% of your revenue. So to me, this deal with Amazon as a pre-order holder is the best news possible, because now I have the confidence that Rivian is going to make it to production and then beyond, because they have such a strong bedrock deal that their company can launch from for many years to come. So personally, I don't see the point of this video at all. I don't think of it that way at all. He even mentioned, well, now I see that the Amazon delivery vans have been pushed back to 2022. In other words, they're still going to deliver the consumer vehicles first. So to me, that's why I have a little bit of trouble trusting that this is very honest. Kind of goes on later to say, but I do love Rivian. I'm rooting for him. I really am. But, I just have my doubts. Seems like he's just kind of stretching for a story here. You all can let me know what you think. You definitely can let me know if you see it differently. If, as a pre-order holder, you are threatened or disappointed that Rivian has signed such a big deal with Amazon, or let me know if you think that that's a good idea, as I do. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. To me personally, I just don't think that it's bad news. I think that it's good news that Rivian has such a big account receivable that they need to deliver on soon. So let's go to the next story, and this is from Reddit, and I just thought some of these were interesting, so I thought I'd share some of these updates. This is called R1S Sleeping Area with second and third row seats down. The length behind the third row seat, while up, is about 22 inches. The length behind the second row seat with the third row folded is about 52 inches. If you have both the third and second row folded, you'll have about 85 inches of cargo space. The interior width is about 51 inches, so it looks like you'd be able to sleep in the back of the R16 with both rows folded, no problem. Your second question was about the second row of seats, if they were heated and cooled. They're only heated. I hope that this information is helpful. So we have a couple follow-ups there about being able to fit a standard piece of drywall or plywood in the back, and I think that is going to be the case, that you're going to be able to do that based on some of those replies. So y'all might be interested. Those are the sizes there. Next conversation. Update, reply, the 7-seat R1S folding nearly flat. So these questions have come up because we've heard they're not going to be completely flat, or that they're going to be nearly flat, and a lot of people have been asking, what does that mean? And so here is an answer from customer support from Rivian Chat. The 7-seat R1S rear seats will fold down to an angle of 3 degrees. This is what they mean by fold nearly flat. Additionally, the rear seats are bolted down and not welded, so they can be removed if desired. And that obviously wouldn't be any kind of like quick release or anything, but you can remove them. But back to the main thing here, an angle of 3 degrees. So I'm kind of imagining that when those seats fold down, they just don't go completely, flat. It's just that there's a little bit of a rise, and then hopefully then when that second row folds down, that would probably be even from there. We've seen other pictures. In fact, I linked to the Rivian Stories Instagram account where a long time ago I posted a video of the pre-production model here, where, and you can see this if you're on YouTube, but with those seats going down, and you see these little flaps, and you see almost like a little ridge or a bump. I'm sure those flaps would fold down. Well, so it looks like now, at least where that hinge is, it's going to be even, but then it's just going to kind of angle up slightly. And so for those of you kind of wondering about sleeping back there or putting things in on a flat surface, personally, I think that it's going to work out pretty well. I think that a lot of cars, that's pretty standard that there's like a little bit of an angle, or maybe sometimes a little bit of a ridge. And personally, I'd rather have a little bit of an angle than a ridge for sure. So hopefully that'll be the case. I'm sure we'll see more as we get closer. For those of you wondering about the R1 T bed dimensions. I'm going to read them off real quick. The bed length at rail, tailgate up, 1,373 millimeters or 54.1 inches. The bed length at the floor with the tailgate down, 2,130 millimeters or 83.9 inches. The bed width, so this is the exposed cargo width, 1,299 millimeters or 51.1 inches. The bed wheelbase width at the floor, 1,277 millimeters or 50.3 inches. And then we have the bed height with the tonneau open, 465 millimeters or 18.3 inches. The max cargo height with the tonneau closed would be 17.1 inches, 434 millimeters. The bed volume, 828 liters or 29.2 cubic feet. So if you're wondering about the bed dimensions, there you have it. One conversation that was interesting just for people to kind of keep in mind, this was posted in Reddit. I just realized my electric prices are not cheap. I'm not going to go and read the entire thing, but he just started doing some calculations based on the rate of electricity at his place in California, I assume here, because they're very high. And he's not going to really save much at all on fuel costs. And I do absolutely agree that that is a bummer. There are a couple comments left down here that I just kind of want to point out there as something to think about when you consider this. And so one person says that utility companies often have special rates for EV charging. It's typically a program you have to enroll into. The one in my area is probably close to half the cost of the current rate, but charging takes place during off-peak hours, aka the middle of the night, I'm sure. And then for your information, a lot of utility companies have programs for free or discounted chargers, etc. And then some other people chimed in and said, yes, do this, that this is definitely the case in their place. So it's just something to keep in mind. And personally, one thing that it kind of brings to my mind is that I need to contact my own electric company and see if there's any kind of programs or incentives or anything in place for better rates while charging. I live in an area that will have pretty cheap electricity either way, but it's still worth checking out. All right, the next story, audio system specs. This one got me pumped. This is one of my favorite stories of the week. Someone dug up, MathMonkey527 dug up some specs on the Elevation 360 audio system. So check some of this out. Details. 2020, 11, 18. Okay, here we go. So the details. 1,400 watts in the upgraded one, the Elevation 360, versus 280 watts in just the standard audio system. 22 speakers in the R1S or 18 in the R1T versus 14 in the standard. And then higher quality components in the Elevation 360, which is the premium audio system. More channels, including 4 roof speakers and a coaxial center channel. If you don't know what coaxial is, I'm kind of an audio nerd. That is where the drivers, you can have more than one driver, but they're basically mounted on top of another one. So, the use case that you usually see this is a tweeter mounted right within a mid-range driver. So that kind of coaxial mount for the center channel, which is cool. You get great phasing from something like that. Then subwoofers, 2 for the R1T under the second row seating and 1 for the R1S in the cargo area. So apparently yes on the subwoofer. And then the removable Bluetooth speaker / lantern, because it's a lantern as well, will have a 6.5-hour battery, which is awesome. So really cool info, great info there from whoever dug that up, and we definitely appreciate that. I thought that was a fun one to share for sure. Apple CarPlay. Have we gotten an official response on whether the Rivian will have Apple CarPlay? The official response is no, from what I have heard. No Apple CarPlay and no Android Auto. And some people are pretty bummed about this because they love the Apple CarPlay ecosystem. I tend to think that the Apple CarPlay system was designed for a smaller screen, And that Rivian with the big center screen, and let's face it, compared to some of the things we're having to do, this is not that complex, the user interface. And so I just tend to think that it's going to be a good system. And I'm not worried about it personally, but I completely understand if CarPlay is your thing and you're disappointed, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Next up, LiDAR. We've mentioned this before, but they removed LiDAR from vehicles. And then we have a little response from Rivian customer support that says this: through the course of development, we determined that LiDAR was no longer necessary to deliver our targeted capabilities. There is a lot of chatter on this one in Reddit. And again, my personal response, I actually think that this is good news personally. I personally like what Tesla is doing in that they are relying mostly on computer vision as a human would. This is a big rabbit hole to go down, but let's keep in mind that Rivian still has ultrasonic sensors and radar. It's still going to be redundant. There are some drawbacks with LiDAR. I do think LiDAR will be getting cheaper and cheaper over the coming years. It's still pretty expensive now. But to me, it points to the fact that overall, just from a very high level, that the Rivian autonomous driving kind of theory or system, they're going to be relying a lot more on computer vision. And to me, I think that's good news, if you ask me. Last but not least is a little thread that I posted on Reddit. I said, podcast fans, what Rivian topics do you want to hear about? And 27 comments later, there are some really good ideas. So I'd just like to thank you if you're listening to this and you actually left a comment. Super helpful. There is a ton to get there, a ton of great questions, a ton of great topics. And hopefully we'll get there over time to all of these. And obviously we're going to see a lot more information coming out about these. A lot of these ideas we won't be able to cover until we actually have the vehicle in front of us. And hopefully one day that'll be the case with me and I can cover a lot more of this. And hopefully, even between now and then, I kind of mentioned that one of my deals agree on getting insider information. I'm an hour away from the factory and trying to land a way to get Rivian to agree to let me interview some of the team members every so often. And then we had Desmotive here say this. Yeah, I mean, I would love just to basically interview some of the team members from Rivian every now and then. And I'm not asking for any kind of craziness, but just to be able to touch base and connect with the people there on ground zero, so to speak, I think would go over really well. So if any of you are listening to this and know of any way that I could get closer to making those contacts happen, I would love to hear from you. I'm going to end by saying this. Please join us over at rivianstories.com. It's been a labor of love there. It is basically like forums meets Facebook, but without any of the advertising and crazy, like me selling your data. We don't do any of that. It's all completely free to join, and the user interface of it is way better than your forums. It feels like a website built in 2020 and not in 1998. So please join us there, because right now it even helps support me doing this. Because right now, this is all just completely a labor of love doing it on Saturday afternoon when honestly, there's a lot of other things I'd want to be doing. So if you could do me a favor and join us there, that helps a little bit for the future as far as trying to grow an audience. Okay, so with that said, that is it for this one. Until next time, keep climbing.